Help support my channel. I have merch with terrible dinosaur puns on it, and I also have a Patreon where I have giveaways every 4 months. Speaking of Patreon giveaways, I'm currently holding yet another one, so if you would like your chance to win one of these cute little guys, a custom one of your choosing, just head on over to my Patreon. Best of luck! Hey everyone, and today I'll be customizing this block of Super Sculpted clay. Yeah, that's right, I'll be hand sculpting from scratch. So today I'm working with the amazing YouTuber 2B2V. I absolutely love his videos, and he requested a Therizinosaurus. So I've printed out this ref sheet for the Therizinosaurus, and I've sort of gotten the line work to the size I need it. So I'm going to be taking this wire, and I'm going to be building a wire armature following the scale of this Therizinosaurus. So as you can see here, I'm bending the edges back on themselves so there's no sharp points. And then I'm slowly bending it and fitting it to the shape of the Therizinosaurus. So think of an armature as a skeleton of the sculpture. It gives strength to the sculpture and makes it easier to build upon because the clay isn't supporting itself, the wire is. Now I'm using a jewelry wire and I'm wrapping it around the whole piece. This allows the clay to actually grip the wire, and it also allows me to attach the legs and arms to the body. That's the armature almost done. So now I'm bulking out the body with some tinfoil. This saves on clay later and keeps the piece nice and light. You can see I'm still trying to match it to the reference to keep it all in size. Now I've run my Super Sculpting through the pasta maker, and I'm now laying it flat all over the piece. I'm not going for a shape yet, I'm just trying to cover the piece. And I'm going to be building it in multiple parts. So here you can see me bulking out the body and the tail and the neck. So now I'm adding a bit more to the hip joint to try and widen the body, because Therizinosaurs are said to have quite wide hips. And again, checking my reference the whole time. So now I'm coming in with some milliput to make the claws. So this is a 2-part epoxy clay, which you mix in 2 parts, and then it sets rock hard within about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. So I'm just making the claws just so they're a little bit stronger from the 2-part epoxy. And you can see I'm sort of measuring them up to the reference. It's a very easy way to keep everything in proportion if you have a good reference. You can see I'm making the feet claws here. So now we've baked it in the oven, I'm going to start on the next part of the sculpting process. I'm going to start on the leg. So it starts off with just getting the basic shape going and then slowly pushing it into the shape you need. I also ripped this leg off again when I realised I didn't add the bacon bond, so I'll probably skip ahead soon and then re-add the leg. But yes, just know I add bacon bond to the wire, then add the clay on top. This gives a secure connection between the clay and the wire and the tinfoil. So you can see here I'm now adding more clay to bulk out the different muscles that I'm seeing in the reference. Not quite looking like the foot yet, but it will get there. I'm also pushing it against the tail to keep the foot flat, because I do want this creature to somewhat be able to stand. I just used my knife there to cut some toes out, and I'm slowly squeezing them into shape. I'm using a variety of different tools just to push back and forth the different shapes. You can see I've got bacon bond now, and I've poked some holes into the toes, and I'm going to dip the toes in the bacon bond and then push them into those little holes. I've got a bull tool here, just carving out some different muscle shapes. And I'll actually be only making one foot and one arm at a time. I'll be baking between each appendage, I should say. So now I'm going to start on the head while the body bakes. So again, using my reference for size, now I'm using my knife to cut the mouth out. Because I want this guy to be screaming. I have a good pose in mind. Using my bull tool here just to push the beak into its shape. I've got some 2-part epoxy eyes that I'm pushing into the skull now. And I'll be rolling out some thin polymer clay and making the eyebrows and ridges and cheekbones. Starting to come along. I think it's time to bake. So that's 2 legs done. It's time to start on the arms. Don't worry about the body not looking very feathery. I have a plan. That's the head all nice and baked. So you can see I'm adding bacon bond to the wire and then I add the clay. That's what I've been doing through the whole process. And yes, I will be adding feathers, don't worry. The body does look a bit naked, but it will come together in the end. So you can see I'm poking holes in the fingertips there, and I'll be adding those giant blade-like claws by dipping them into the bacon bond and then adding them to the hand. It's an odd pose, but trust me, in the end this is going to make sense. I've got a very particular scene in mind for this piece. 2B2V has a very particular style to his videos, and I want to capture a scene that he regularly has in his videos. So that's another arm baked, so now I'm starting on the final arm, and then I'll be able to do the neck. I haven't actually got the head attached to the body there, I've just got it blue tacked down just so I can visualize in my head that everything's looking fine. You can see I'm adding a bit of fur texture there with my bull tool. I should say feather texture. So now we're starting on the neck, bacon bond to the wire and then polymer clay over the top. I'm dipping the head in some bacon bond and now I'm pushing it into the top of the clay and then blending the clay over that. Not too worried about the shape of the neck here because again I'll be covering over with some feathers. Now I'm getting some texture going with my ball stylist. I'm actually texturing the feathers in on the neck because it's a sort of a shorter fur in the references. Shorter fur, shorter feather. The big mistake people make when they're sort of furring or feathering their sculpted creatures is they start from the face and then work back. What you actually need to do is start from the bottom and work your way to the head, to the front. That way the fur lays on top of each other how it should. So that's the piece all baked. It's time to start the base. I'm quite happy with the shape. So now I'm laying him on the base, measuring out the shape. I've lined out everything I want. I've carved out a place for the lights because this thing will light up. And I've got tin foil for the 2 mountain ridges or cliff faces I'm going to add. So I'm starting off with some Super Sculpey and some Bacon Bond. So I'm going to be pouring the Bacon Bond over the whole base to give the Super Sculpey something to grip to. So these have been rolled through the pasta maker to make them nice thin sheets, and I'm just going to cover the whole base. So that's the whole base covered except for where the water will go in, and now I've got the Therizinosaurus centered in the middle of the river, and I'm carving out where the claws would have dragged claw marks into the ridges. Now I'm carving them out deeper. I think by this point you can kind of see what I'm going for with the shape. Now I'm coming in with some tin foil to texture the whole piece. Give it a nice natural texture to the rocks. Now I'm going in with some Bacon Bond along the edges just to make sure the resin doesn't run under the clay. Testing again to make sure the sculpture still fits in there nicely. Adding a little bit more texture. Now it's baked, it's time to paint. So I'm coming in with some ultramatte grey, just as the base coat. I want this to be sort of a dark environment, so I'm going for some more darker tones than normal. Now I'm coming in with a Jo Sonja brown, and I'm doing the ground in a brown coat. So this will make the grass turf texture look a bit more muddy afterwards by undertoning in brown. And I'm also doing the river in this darker reddy brown. Again, we're going for a dark look to this piece. So now I've started with my favourite paint, Citadel. I'm coming with a bit of green, so you can see how the red mud still shows up under the green a little bit. It's a nice undertone. But I've also chosen a darker green as well, because again, keeping to the dark tones. 2B2V induces a lot of fear when he enters the field. So I'm going with some Jo Sonja beige, and I'm sort of dry brushing it around the edges, and I'm streaking the river with it too. This creates sort of a movement in it and also gives more life to the bank. And I'm also dry brushing it over the rocks to bring a bit more mud and dirt to it. So now I'm coming in with an even darker brown, and I'm adding more depth to the river. And if you're wondering if I'm going to be playing with 2B2V for our collaboration, yes, and I'm extremely excited. I'm kind of hoping he chooses the Thera, because I would love to play the Thera with him. That is what he's known for, and what he's known for bringing so much fear to the game with. I really hope I capture his gameplay in this sculpture. So now I'm coming with some Mod Podge. So I'm starting off with some gravel terrain with the Mod Podge. I'm coming in with the turf. So Mod Podge first, then I'll add my greeny rocky turf over the green areas. So now I'm starting with my washes, of course from Citadel. I'm giving everything a good wash. This brings out all the shadow effects and adds more life to the piece. Coming in with some ultramatte grey, and I'm sort of dry brushing some lighter effects on the rocks. I want to bring some yet more life to the environment this Thera stands in. Now I'm going to do a few coats of Mr. Super Clear to seal everything in. Now it's time to glue down the lights. So I'm just pushing them through a pre-drilled hole, and then I'll be gluing the piece down. This is just the battery pack and the light switch. Now I've glued everything down to the back, and I'll be sprinkling Mod Podge and gravel just to hide the wires a bit better. I'm just moving the rocks out of the way of the lights a bit more before it sets. Now we can start the painting of Thera. So I'm starting off with a base coat of grey. This part generally won't be seen once I add the feathers, but I'm still adding it anyway. Now I'm coming in with a sort of a mustard yellow over the feet and claws. Now some Citadel red. I'm basing these colours off the male Thera as requested by 2B2V. The male Thera from the Isles, I should say. Now I'm coming in with a brighter yellow, and I'm adding some sort of brighter areas. Now some white, and I'm lightening up a few of the areas too, just to add a bit more life. I'll be adding the white to the top of the fingers as well. Fingers? Claws? One of them's got to be right. Now I'm coming in with some black, just painting the claws black, and I'm also adding a bit of a dry brush of black into certain areas. This will help the feathers blend later. Now I'm coming with some blue for the eyes. I was very surprised to find out that the Thera in the Isles, its eyes look very blue, surprisingly. So now I'm coming in with some Mod Podge on the claws and in the mouth. Sorry, not Mod Podge, Liquitex High Gloss Varnish. I'm adding a wash now to the areas that have been sculpted, like the feathered sculpted areas and the claws. This will just bring out a bit more shadow and life to it. Now we're going to add the feathers. So I've picked out this fake fur fabric. So what I do here is I lay down a strip of Mod Podge, then cut out a strip of fur, lay down that fur, then add a bit of Mod Podge to the top of that fur. And this is a very slow process. You have to start from the end, which is the tail, and work your way to the front so the fur lays correctly. If you do it the other way, it looks messy and unbrushed. You have to take your time with this, working in small areas and letting it dry, then starting again. It is a very slow process, but well worth it. So I hope I'm explaining myself enough here, because a lot of people ask how I fur my creatures. It is literally just laying down a strip of Mod Podge, then laying down a strip of fur, laying down a little bit of Mod Podge on top of that fur, letting it dry, and then doing the next layer. Now I'm getting some watered down Mod Podge, and I'm shaping the fur. Sort of brushing it to conform to the muscles that I sculpted underneath. This is very watered down Mod Podge. can see how it's sort of flattening the fur and making its shape. Now I'm coming in with a bit of a trim for some of the fur, and I'm cutting up the fur. That way it keeps a natural look. I'm not cutting straight across. Now I'm going to try a different thing for the water. I've added my UV resin and I'm coming in with a Liquitex gloss gel. I've been told this makes really, really good ripple effects, a nice in between Mod Podge and my clear silicone for bathrooms. So I'm trying it out because I want this piece to have a bit of a more rapidy sort of water happening. So I'm sort of dabbing it on with my glue brush and I'll be letting it dry. It takes about 24 hours to dry. So now, yes, the plaque, the famous stay hydrated saying from 2B2V, as per requested. So now I'm coming in with my clear bathroom silicone and I'm building up some bigger, more splashier rapids around the feet in different areas. This too takes about 24 hours to dry. And that's 2B2V's piece done. I'm really happy with this piece. I hope I captured 2B2V's gameplay. I'm really proud of this piece, and I know he absolutely loves it. He was very excited to receive it. And thank you 2B2V for working with me. I'm so excited to play with you. Just gotta wait to get out of this sling so I can actually play games on my computer again. Hopefully soon. But yes, thank you everyone for watching, and thank you 2V for collaborating with me, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye!